Hello my nakamtachi, this is JoyGirl with a review for chapter 1027, and I want to start by saying that this was another good, very solid chapter. There was a decent amount of action, but still very much felt like a setup chapter that heightens the tension for us to really understand everyone's plight. Luffy now faces Kaido one-on-one and must finish the job within a time limit. Momonosuke has to stop Onigashima from falling, which is turned into a giant ticking bomb. Zoro almost fell to his death if it wasn't for his quick reaction, and is now outside in a very disadvantageous situation fighting a flying enemy whilst at risk of falling off the edge. But before we continue, I want to congratulate the winners of our Joy Fleet artwork competition, where the theme this week was to draw a sky-splitting Conqueror's clash between any One Piece characters, and here are our winners. In equal third place, we have Rusky and Jaso. Rusky's drawn their imagination of the events at God Valley, with Roger and Rox splitting the skies, and this manga panel style artwork really has me wanting to find out about this history even more. Jaso also has an imagined scene, but this one is of Absalom and Stealth Black drooling it out in front of the bathhouse, and their passion so fierce that it split the skies. In second place, we have Pukiaki, who continues to bring a smile to my face because we have two of the most formidable combatants in a sky-splitting clash, Roxy Zebek and Fortrix. But in all seriousness, how cool are all the gifters on the side? And in first place, we have Wacom, who has gifted us with 3 spectacular artworks of the sky splitting from different perspectives. Until we get the eagerly anticipated moment between Luffy and Shanks in the manga, we have this to tide us by. As well as an artwork of Onigashima, which looks like it could be an album cover, and sweet little Chopper having an electric Tarzan moment. A sky-splitting congratulations to all of our winners, and a big thank you to everyone who participated, and make sure to stick around to the end of the video to check out everyone's submissions. But moving on to chapter 1027, this week we got a cover page featuring none other than the Pirate King himself, who's ticked off the King of the Jungle. This cover page is actually full of kings. Along with Roger and the Lion, we've got Shanks, the first character to show us King's Haki, and perhaps its most proficient user, and Buggy the King, who really speaks for himself. Seriously though, I love these cheeky reminders of how similar Roger and Luffy are, getting up to some mischief. I know we've seen Luffy in a coat, but I can't wait to see him don the fully embellished coat that Roger is seen wearing in this cover page. And also, if anyone's figured out my question from the reaction stream and can read what seems to be kanji letters on the lion's front leg, then please let us know what Roger wrote down below. Now, before we get into the really juicy bits of the chapter content, I want to start by quickly saying that I really like how this chapter began, because it starts by showing us a panel of the victorious Nekomamushi very cutely covering his eyes to deactivate his Sulong form, whilst towering over a defeated Perospero, which mirrors the end of the last chapter with Inuarashi's winning panel over Jack. And I'm happy that Oda dedicated this panel to Neko, because I was wondering why we didn't see this last chapter, considering all the shots of the two minks were paralleled side by side except for this victory stance. So I really appreciate this continuity. It was also very sweet to see Carrot hugging Neko, very reminiscent to how she leapt onto Jinbei or even Luffy when they respectively returned to Wano. And I know we've said this before, but seeing as we were expecting Carrot's moment in the Wano arc to be against Perospero, whom Neko handled instead, I do continue to wonder whether Oda continuing to sprinkle in Carrot here and there is just to include her in this arc, or is actually setting us up for something else. But moving on to Luffy and Kaido, whilst last chapter was a pivotal moment in the war and in the series itself, the face-off between these two in this chapter felt like a landmark. If the last chapter wasn't enough to convince you that Luffy has entered a new tier, Yamato's words about what was written in Oden's journal about the clashes between Roger and Whitebeard solidified this idea for me. Much of what we know of Yamato's character is about experiencing the great things that Oden had experienced and recorded in his journal. And now Yamato has experienced one such moment by witnessing a sky-splitting clash. And it again makes you wonder how many more of these experiences will Yamato get to have similar to Oden's experiences. Say for example, whether Yamato will be in the presence of Luffy becoming Pirate King one day. Because with each chapter, Yamato really feels like a straw hat. The fact that Luffy didn't even need to explain himself and Yamato understood exactly what he was saying, that he wants Kaido all to himself, and Luffy's exuberant smile just filled my heart. Even the depth to which Yamato understands all the responsibility that Luffy has shouldered despite his conditions, explaining to Momo that they will need to step up in their own way to help Luffy, was such a beautiful moment that strikes me as something that Zoro or Sanji would say. But we'll get to Yamato and Momo in a bit. For now, focusing on Luffy and Kaido, this has been solidified to be a one-on-one fight. Or even if someone else joins them on the rooftop, we know that Luffy desired it to end in a one-on-one battle. And I love how Oda built up to this dialogue as we actually get a panel of Luffy and Kaido Kaido standing face to face in an even setting. With the sky splitting above them and the tremor created by their power below, Luffy and Kaido are face to face as equals. This fight ultimately comes down to two men whose strength are draining with each second, and it's now time to test who has the stronger will. With a simple showing, Oda managed to get Kaido's dominance back because we witnessed Kaido versus Yamato in previous chapters in what seemed to be like even clashes, but it was confirmed in this chapter as not to be the case. In this chapter, we saw Kaido stun the Bagwa's after effect, with Yamato being on the losing end of that exchange even whilst on guard with the Mirror Mountain shield. And yet simultaneously, the spirit of One Piece was kept alive even in the most tense of situations through Luffy reining back Kaido using his rubber boy legs in a moment of serious hilarity. This is a moment that really captures Oda's words in the past about why he chose the goofy ability for his protagonist. Oda said that no matter how dark or serious the story gets, Luffy's unique ability can be used to always lighten the mood and keep readers engaged. And I have to say, it really works because I really enjoyed this scene of Luffy holding Kaido back in such a wild way. But moving on to Momonosuke and Yamato, when Yamato first introduced us to the Cloud Flame ability of dragons, I said that it would be cool to see a moment where Yamato teaches Momonosuke how to fully harness this ability, which is what we got in this chapter. It really seems like Oda showing us Momo's growth and journey to greatness through visual representations. Back in chapter 1025, I interpreted Momo going up each floor of the building as a metaphor for Momo building up his courage, and it seems like we've got something similar in this chapter. Similar to the panels focusing on Momo on each floor, in chapter 1027, we get a series of 3 panels following Momo's claws, and I think the 3 panels is a visual representation of Momo's character development. As Yamato teaches him that dragons grab the clouds and don't actually fly, my interpretation of this is that Momo is grabbing a hold of his and Wano's future. The saying "reach for the skies," which means to try to achieve or attain something difficult, can also be replaced with reaching for the stars, the moon, or even the clouds, which is what we have in Momo's case. Quite obviously literally, but also figuratively, with Momo trying to secure Wano's future and safety. And we see this in 3 steps. In the first panel, Momo has nothing and his hand represents cautiousness and uncertainty. In the second, we see him taking the first step of reaching and taking hold. And then in the third, we see Momonosuke has taken a firm hold, taking control of the future. And this idea of grabbing is a really powerful image because the word grab indicates a very active moment. To actually grab something requires will, strength, and determination. And the way this all unfolded with first the panel of Momo plummeting down to the 3-step series of him actually taking control, and then that awesome panel of his elated surprise in actually flying was such a meaningful journey to witness. And having Yamato there to guide Momo made it all the more meaningful. I very much love this dynamic. Along with the heavy connection between their respective fathers, Momo and Yamato are very entertaining together. For a moment, I actually forgot the history between their fathers because of how much fun I was having reading through the pages. Seeing Yamato club Momo was such a funny and endearing moment that really builds on Yamato's character. On some occasions, Yamato is like a respectful samurai who recognizes Momonosuke's status, and on the other, Yamato is quite like Luffy. It's a very entertaining dynamic. In saying that, I'm not sure how I feel about Yamato not having a set fight and just being the one to help Momo. Maybe there'll be another threat later on, maybe even directly a threat to Momonosuke because he's unable to deal with it due to being preoccupied with Onigashima, and then Yamato will have to take care of it instead. Because whilst I always did think that Yamato will be the one to teach Momo how to control his flame clouds, at the same time I do want Yamato to have a decisive moment in the war for Yamato not just as a character but as a fighter. But for now, Yamato's role in teaching Momonosuke is very necessary. Even after leaving Luffy, who for majority of Momo's character development has been the figure to encourage him to grow and mature, Yamato is now fulfilling this role as we realize the grave danger that we're in. If Onigashima dropping onto Flower Capital wasn't enough of a time limit, we find out in this chapter that due to the amount of explosive and weapons, the island itself has now become a ticking time bomb, and it's up to Momonosuke to make sure this doesn't happen. We're reminded of how massive this task actually is, with a panel showing the colossal size of Onigashima, which makes Momo's dragon form look small in comparison. And similar to the last chapter where we got a reminder of the oblivious Wano citizens, we get another panel in this chapter so that the threat and danger is grounded in the lives of actual innocent citizens. And to add to the pressure, Kaido's ability is dwindling and his flame clouds may not be strong enough to continue holding Onigashima up. So the heroes are actually in a very tricky predicament because the better Luffy does in his fight to weaken Kaido, the harder it is for Momo to achieve his task in holding Onigashima up. This means Momonosuke now has a clear task to get his flame clouds stronger than Kaido's, and it's a very risky but gripping dynamic that we'll see unfold. We will get to witness Luffy weakening Kaido Kaido, while simultaneously Momo is growing his will and strength so that at some point, Momo's cloud flame ability will surpass Kaido's flame clouds due to his declining strength. And so the chapter title could be a reference to how Onigashima is a massive time bomb, but could also refer to King the Disaster. So it seems each of the monster trio now have a set one-on-one fight, because like Luffy, Zoro expresses his intention of wanting a one-on-one fight against King. It was interesting to see Franky's appearance in this chapter, which leaves me now wondering whether this is a seed planted for future events, or to simply add dialogue to this scene since King doesn't talk much. But nonetheless, it was a nice touch to see the two's brief interaction. I love seeing how well this crew knows each other, with Zoro telling Franky to step back as opposed to agreeing for help, and Franky understanding this completely really makes me happy. As for Zoro versus King itself, first of all, I love the cut to this fight. Seeing the incoming air slashes was a nice contrast to the immediately preceding panel of Wano citizens enjoying the Fire Festival. And it was an amusing continued reminder of the little care the Beast Pirates have for each other, with King handing out air slashes to everyone, allies and foes alike, with a hypocritical complaint from Queen, who similarly endangered everyone with his virus in the past. This was balanced by the tension with the build-up of King coming out of smokes. A little bit of ominous music played in my head as he was approaching Zoro and us approaching the reveal of his hybrid form. I like the decision not to change too much of King's hybrid form. Something I would have liked is for him to have kept his flames because I like that detail, but I did like that it was really only the addition of his wings. I think that made it all the more impressive seeing him throw Zoro around. King, apart from his dark aura, has seemed less physically threatening to me due to his size. Compared to the others, he really seems more like a large, well-built human. It doesn't help that when we see him in his Zoan form, he has quite skinny legs, and even though we saw him kick down the Big Mom pirates off the waterfall, it still didn't instill a foreboding fear of brute force for me. But this chapter changed my perception that is Kaido's highest ranking officer. King having that much attack power was a good surprise because Zoro's best fights are always against opponents whose strength and abilities puts Zoro at a disadvantage. And the movement of their fight is something that I really appreciated. Having them start their battle on the public performance stage meant that we had a lot of spectators, which for me hyped up the fight, and it felt like the crowd was speaking for them. To King being able to push Zoro outside not only increased the level of King's threat, but also allowed for the two to finally exchange words at the end. The stage has now been set for the reveal of King's face, and hopefully a further delve into the Lunarian race now that their battle has moved outside to a more private area with no spectators in sight. And like the crowd, we do have to give full props to Zoro for being the one to crack King's mask and endanger King to expose his face for the first time. Also, Zoro's pride as a swordsman was on full display in this chapter. He had great showings of quick thinking in very risky situations with his Sky Tanuki move, which I wouldn't mind getting developed further, and Zoro expressing his distaste at his opponent trying to end his life without the honor of using a blade was a very true to character goosebumping piece of dialogue. But it really does seem like that took a lot out of Zoro, and King even expected Zoro to be almost done for, which is why he's reverted back from his hybrid form. But if we know Zoro, then we have very fun times ahead. This chapter ultimately sets up the final tasks for our heroes, and with the healthy amount of lore and backstories we still need to see, I am very excited for all the developments to come. But let me know what you think by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to like and share the video, and please do subscribe for more One Piece discussions. Also join our Joy Fleet Discord server for more One Piece fun, such as participating in our artwork competitions, or even become a patron member where you'll be granted a special role within that server. Thank you to our patrons who help support the channel. This is JoyGirl, and I'll see you again soon.